Yeah, you guys can start it
Yep.
off.
I think it's really more of an AZK question.
I don't know if I would, to be honest.
Now click it again. See the Seawolf question first. AZK. Do you see it? It says he's trying to get McCree up to speed.
Oh, yeah, I see it now. Just competitive play with me. I guess. Just watch reviews of, watch like good players playing him, and I don't believe in like training range and all that stuff too much, or using another game to practice Overwatch.
And if you look at like Korean McCree players, for instance, they always play like a lot less aggressive generally. Like they're sitting up on a flank. They're just like poking constantly at the supports or whoever's vulnerable. They aren't really like running in and like fanning the hammer as much. So there's like two different ways you can play it depending on the team comp and situation.
And I guess AZK should answer how Overwatch is different from CS, since I don't think anyone else really played it too much.
It's not really comparable.
And it's only like superficially similar to TF2. Like Uber and TF2 would be like a low tier ultimate in this game. Like the ultimates and the abilities are it's completely different. It's like
Besides Overwatch, I don't play any other games. Obviously, I had a Quake background, but currently I don't play any other games. It's all Overwatch.
Yeah, I'd say for myself, it's pretty much the same. I'll just play a little Quake Live, just like that's where Tim and I came from, but Tim more so from Quake 2. I came from Quake 3, and then we started playing Quake Live, and I play it every now and then and stream like just some random games, but like 90% of my time spent with Overwatch. There's not really a lot of free time with how much we have to practice to be at the top level to actually spend time playing other games.
I like historical grand strategy games like Paradox and like hardcore simulators, man. You gotta do that. World War II submarine simulator where you get out your protractor and stopwatch.
Uh, some of the heroes I want to see get played more would be Mercy for sure, which I think it will be played more as a result of the Ana nerf incoming to her nano boost. I think that'll make things a little more interesting instead of Ana being a must pick almost every time, no matter what.
Ana and Lucio are too much of a must pick, and then Reinhardt, obviously. Like you can do without it situationally, but that's like the default safe comp. If you're like looking at a organized team strat perspective, you want to like be trying to call or keep track of what ults they're gonna have in every fight, and then you play around like what ults they have and what ults you have. So either you like try and initiate first with whatever combo you might have, or you're trying to like bait out and counter their ults. Because the high level it's a lot about just like who gets the most value out of their ults. If you start out a fight and you get like two people with an ult, and you're pretty much certain to win, or it's like a very high probability. So
Yeah, some important things to do, communicating with your team, or basically to constantly say what is your alt status and what are like, do you plan on using it in the next engagement? Like, how are we approaching it? In the sense, like, okay, I got Zarya ult. Make sure your grenade is ready. Make sure you're in position. Do they have a Zarya ult for whatever ults they have? So you want to be aware of the ults you have, what you plan on engaging with, and what ults they have, and kind of be ready to counter it. If you know they have a Rhine ult, then you want to play heavy behind your Rhine with his shield up. Just constantly communicate about ult statuses with no dead air between fights. And in our case, with Team Liquid, we pretty much have ID as the primary shot caller. But we all do contribute communication-wise, especially with ult statuses and like who we're going to focus target. If someone's like 50 health, like if, for example, a good shot call would be if Mei is grenaded and then goes into her ice block. She's only like 50 health, so she'll come out of it with 50 health. It's like everyone focus the Mei. Situations like that where anyone can be the caller on the focus target.
And you want, like, everyone should be assessing themselves whether they're being effective and whether or not they should switch class. You shouldn't have to, like, one guy who just tells you when to switch, because you could be like, theoretically your class is good in this situation, but the way they're playing it, they're just shutting you down and you're doing nothing. So you need to, like, when you die, you need to assess that and determine if you need to change or not.
One other thing as well, when you are doing something as a team, you have to do it as a team. If DaHanG or if Minstrel call a disengage and they start disengaging, everyone else, ID, AZK, everyone else needs to come back with them. Because if they disengage and then you leave 2 or 3 of your guys up front and they just feed them an ultimate, you're essentially giving your opponent an advantage for free. You want to make sure that at all times, if somebody calls something like a disengage, you all need to do it together. Otherwise, you are just putting yourself in a less advantageous position to begin with for the next engagement.
So it is theoretically more correct to do the wrong thing together than to do like your own thing?
Exactly.
All right.
I think this question is more for Minstrel, because I know I can't comment on favorite story-based game. That doesn't apply to me. So
DaHanG's all about the deep plot of the Quake 3 arena, where all the best fighters from around the world meet and engage in combat. I mean, like, I think most AAA games are pretty bad story-wise. And so I like Call of Duty Mountain Dew Doritos. I'm a badass American Special Forces man. Of recent stuff, like The Witcher 3 is good. Like, I go back to, like, old BioWare RPGs, Baldur's Gate, Planescape Torment, all that kind of old school, semi-hardcore gaming.
I'd say for me, my favorite story-based game was probably the God of War series. It's one I got into when I had free time.
What about in Quake 4 where you fight the Strogg invasion?
It's okay. But yeah, I don't know. Oh yeah, and then to add to that, probably a few Final Fantasies. Like I'm really looking forward to the 7 remake and how they're gonna approach that. Even though I don't have much time, like whenever they finally get it to come out, I'll try to put aside some time to play that.
The Final Fantasy series, if they want to say like a character's old, he's like 24.
Yeah, it's like everybody.
They're all like 17-year-old Asian kids.
Yeah.
So for coaches for Overwatch, I mean, we view it as a must-have. If you want to be a team that can start rising to the top, you definitely need a coach, because 2 reasons. Well, many reasons, but the 2 primary reasons that stick out for me is, number 1, we have someone calling us all out on our mistakes and that means the players aren't calling each other out. So it lets that element of potential friction, not really exist to the level that it might. So there's less ego involved, I think, when a coach is calling out, mistakes and how we can improve, which is definitely important to keep everyone like really on task and just focused without any kind of ego issues getting in the way. And then, of course, the strategy element is really big too. It's good to just have constant reinforcement on some small things in terms of if we're not communicating enough, getting that pointed out, but then at the same time trying to understand in a more detailed sense what are opposing teams' strengths and weaknesses, what do they typically run on offense, on defense, on particular maps. So if you have a coach that has invested some time looking into that sort of thing, it can really benefit the team, so you have a little more insight as to what to expect. Anyone else want to comment on that, or think I pretty much hit that?
You summed it up eloquently.
Next question. So where do I think Overwatch is going to be in the next 10 years esports-wise? It's still, to me, it remains to be seen. I know there's a big Blizzard League announcement that's expected to happen. Based on the success or lack thereof of that league, I think that'll have a bit of a impact on the long-term trajectory of Overwatch. If it's really successful, I don't see any issues with it being around for another 5 years. 10 is super long. That's really long term, especially for esports standards.
Yeah, they've all you could say Dota and CS have been around 10 years, but they release new versions of the games.
Right.
So it's not exactly the same. So in 10 years, you'll be on Overwatch 3.
If and when, yep.
Yeah. Who wants to comment on Rogue?
You, man. You're the rogue guy.
Am I?
You're always going rogue within our team, so.
They're good. I think that they're one of the most aggressive teams. They're always just rushing into you constantly, and they're always trying to get as many fights on the car as possible. So it's constantly stalled. And then if they lose people, they're just trying to delay on the cart so that they have time to get back and reinforce the fight. So they're just good at stalling. Obviously, they've got great aimers and AKM and wins. I think that if you simulated E-League 1,000 times, they would beat Misfits the vast majority of the time.
Agreed. As far as D.Va goes with buffs and whatnot in the PTR, I haven't spent any time the last week and a half or 2 weeks that's been out. I do think that it is good to increase her speed a bit while she's shooting, because she's just so slow and such a meat shield. You can just blow through her if she decides to actually shoot. So I think that could be good. That could give her a little more viability, as well as the possibility with these Zarya nerfs. We could see her played more, because since Zarya has been picked 90% of the time in all these games, and she just gets her charge. All she has to do is just her alone, just focus down D.Va, and D.Va can't do anything. So, and once she loses her mech, she's so useless. So, so I'm glad to see the change, because as much as I like playing Zarya, I don't like to play her every single game. I don't think a lot of teams like to see her in the game all the time. Right now she's a little bit too well balanced of a character, and her ultimate is a little overpowered. So the fact that her ultimate's that good, and the rest of her kit is so balanced, then it's going to lead to her being played all the time. But yeah, I'd like to see more of a revolving door of the off tanks being played, so that there's it's a little more fresh. It's not seeing the same thing every time. So, um, and if they get the changes wrong with Diva, we can always figure out what to do with it, whether she's the problem or if there's other champions that are OP, and we can, hopefully Blizzard can balance it correctly. But I have a feeling that with Sombra and whatever other champs they decide to release, heroes, I mean, just like any other game like League or Dota, the shit that's new is going to be overpowered. Uh, they want it to be overpowered. They want you to play the new champion. They don't want to like put a new champion out there and have it just sit on the side the whole time. So they're going to make sure that at least for the first month, maybe even 3 months, that champion is played quite often. And then they'll probably look into adjusting the character. So only time will tell, in my opinion.
A lot of times, what's more important is like whether the hard or soft counters are in the meta. So like when Diva got buffed, it didn't really matter because Zarya was just getting played 100% of the time. So she might have actually been worse post buff just because one of her, well, it was like Zarya and Mei, they both destroyed Diva. So those are like, they're being played frequently, then she's like actually less viable, even though she was objectively improved. Kind of role. I mean, we need more supports and tanks. There's already like a ton of DPS. There's no one that duplicates the Reinhardt role, and there's no one that duplicates Lucio's role, which is why you see them all the time. I don't get the feeling that she's gonna be like a tank. What?
Yeah, I don't really have any insight, but I just hope long term, kind of what Rapha was saying. I just hope Sombra's not, abused, whatever it is. Like I don't like how Ana came out, and Ana's been abused like in every 90+% of comps. It's in, and so I just hope we don't repeat that for Sombra, or if we do, it's just for 1 month, not 3+ months. Because my ideal situation is where pretty much every hero can be used, and you can justify it as long as it melds well with the other heroes. Kind of like on King of the Hill, you never run. Right now, you're like always running Zarya. I guess you're running Zarya on everything, but
Yeah.
I don't like that. I don't like the idea of like must picks at all, and in any circumstance, I don't like the concept of must picks, except with maybe it's like second point, and you're trying to defend a 2 CP map, so everyone starts going Diva, Mei, Tracer, Lucio just to stall. But other than that situation, I'd like it if all heroes are super balanced.
Sawyer's question: does the Team Liquid Overwatch team live together? At the moment, no. We all reside in our own places. I think a lot of that question will be answered in the future depending on the league that Blizzard's going to do. Because I assume that the league would probably be run out, in the LA area where they're stationed. So if that happens, then we'll have to discuss as a team what's going to be best for us. Whether it is like living in a team house and Liquid helping us provide that, or whether we do something where we all live kind of separately in apartments and we have a roommate, but then we meet in an office every day like it's work, and then after we're done, then we go home, and we can spend time away rather than all being cooped up together, that type of thing. So there's a couple options to go for. I think like if the league is something really consistent that we'll be playing in, then it's something that we're going to have to address and to take care of. But if the tournament structure stays kind of the way it is at the moment, then I don't necessarily think that we need to do that long term. We just might need to meet up and like boot camp together before a big tournament or something like that every now and then. I think that would be beneficial, but it doesn't have to be something that's done all the time. So it just depends on how the league plays out.
Okay, the next one's for me. How would you get your name out as an analyst or a coach? In my case, I got very lucky, and I was given a chance early on by a couple of big teams at the time that were, top 10 ranked teams. They gave me a chance, and that opened the opportunities for where I am now. Honestly, if you're coming in now, if you're trying to get your name out as a coach or an analyst, frequent things like the competitive Overwatch subreddit. Do demo reviews. Break down VODs. Break down games like the Envious Lunatic High game. Look at those Korean VODs, because those are teams that are coming into the scene that very few people understand, and very few teams have really looked into them. So break that down. Try and understand why they're doing what they're doing and how they're working, how their cohesion is. Because if you look at those teams, they're very good when it comes to the micro things, comes to using abilities and ultimates and stuff. So break that down. Show that you can analyze a game and understand why things are done, and people will notice. There's a number of communities, Discord communities, there's a number of subreddits, things like that. Just honestly make videos, break down what you see, and apply. Honestly, if I hadn't applied for this, I would never have gotten to be a member of this team. So don't ever count yourself out. Just apply, talk to people, network yourself, because that's the only way to get your name out there, is if you actually actively try to do it.
Yeah, I agree with what Novx said. I think part of it too, when you're starting to put yourself out there, let's say, for example, like I think you mentioned or something, you're starting to do VOD reviews and stuff like that, maybe making videos. You'll know, like, as you watch, like, you should watch your own VOD reviews back, like, see how you're actually analyzing what you're discussing. Is there like dead time where you should be talking about something? Are you coming across with the information for people and, you know, and in like a straightforward manner? Like, just make it simple to understand. Just know what you're talking about, and as long as you're honest with yourself and like what you're actually doing, and you make improvements, then certain people are going to start to notice you if you actually have what it takes, like if you're doing a good job. So just a lot of self-evaluation, I think, and yeah, just keep working on improving yourself so that you can help the others.
Who's our LG master?
I guess that would be me since I play Zarya, right? But I think
Uh,
Kevin could maybe answer this question too, because of playing CS and with the way that sensitivities were then, and then compared to now, like with tracking, I think that'd be good. And then I can chip in after.
Well, in CS we just play with our arm mostly. We try to use the wrist as less as possible, and that's what I try to do still in Overwatch.
well, if you look at most CS players, they've got like an average of something like 18 inches of 360, so it's very low sensitivity, especially if you compare it to, just random average players. So I think most all of us use like a 17 or inch wide mouse pad or something like that, and you want to use like a lot of the space. Like my philosophy was I want to have as low as possible while still like it's having like enough room to not have to like pick up the mouse mid fight kind of thing. So
Yeah, go ahead, finish up, Minstrel.
I was just gonna say you have the highest sensitivity of us, I think.
Yeah, I probably do. My approach to sensitivity has always been when I started to try to get good and improve my game in Quake, I noticed how important it was to try to like always be ready and looking where you need to be, like where your opponent should be, and not being taken by surprise. So I've always taken it where like on the off chance that I'm wrong with where my opponent is, or especially like in team games, like there's more chaos. So you need to be able to react faster. I've always felt it's really important to be able to look as soon as possible to be able to shoot, but it can't be so high that it affects your aim in a very negative manner. So, and as far as your wrist is concerned, I'd say just try to like consciously, while you, it's gonna probably hinder your aim for like the first week, but consciously just remember that when you're shooting, like you don't have to be like gripping the mouse real hard. You shouldn't really. Like the more that you grip the mouse, like the less tracking that you'll probably have. Just be real calm and real smooth about it, and just realize that you need to be focused to like hit your shots. And most of aiming anyway is based off of positioning, not only like mouse positioning, but your character positioning, how you're moving, how you're dodging, how you anticipate, your opponent is going to dodge, like are they in good positions or bad positions, and like using those situational awarenesses like to provide easier aiming opportunities for yourself, so that you're not constantly having to track with your mouse, which normally that people aren't going to be able to do that. Like you need to find the best ways to allow like your movement to aim for you, and then as you set yourself up in positions like, okay, if he goes this way, then I know I can track this way, or he has to make like one of two decisions so that it's easier for yourself to adjust as soon as he makes that choice, and then you could start aiming well after that. So, let's see here.
Favorite books and movies. So I guess I'll say my favorite book is Demon Haunted World by Carl Sagan. It's like a book basically about, in essence, skepticism and critical thinking, and it's really well written. And my favorite movie is probably The Matrix.
My favorite movie is Breaking Point. You should all go watch it.
That's an endorsement right there.
Thanks for the plug.
Well, I've got 230 books on my Kindle, and I like to go out on hot dates with it at cocktail bars and just sit there and read by myself. I like various like nonfiction, mostly like history books, finance, learning science, fun stuff like that.
For me, I'd say like the current book I'm reading, and I've talked to Minstrel about it some, but I'm reading the Wheel of Time series by what's his name?
Robert Jordan.
Yeah, Robert Jordan. And I'm on like book 8 of the 13 or something like that, but the books are so long, they take a while to get through. But I've really, really enjoyed it so far, and it'll probably take me another couple years because I read it slowly. As far as like I don't set aside enough time to read it, so I just read it here and there when I feel like I get a chance. But that doesn't bother me. So
I think he started writing the series in like 1988 or something, and then he died like 2 books beforehand, so someone else had to finish it. It's like 13 or 14 books.
I can answer this, I guess. I've answered this a lot on my stream. This question is from, as Tim likes to call him, S3N. S3N. It says, am I going to continue to go to QuakeCon? I think that just all depends in the next year. Like where Overwatch is going, how we're doing as a team, what the schedule looks like. Is there going to be free time to do so? So it's all really just up in the air. And it'll also depend on like what the actual tournaments for QuakeCon will be, let's say in the next year. And when Quake Champions is released. So as a follow-up question to that, I see up here where he had it somewhere. It was from Sync Air, but pretty much the question was is Liquid going to look to use pretty much the Quake players that are already on the team to make a Quake Champions team, or if they'll look to, sponsor somebody else. Again, I just think that depends on, Overwatch's growth, and then we'll make a decision as a team, the players that, do we want to stick with the game when Quake Champions comes out? Do we want to stick with Overwatch? Are we happy with how we're playing, what we're doing, the game itself? Like, do we still enjoy playing it? And a lot of it actually come down to whether Quake Champions is really good or not. Because if it's something that we don't enjoy playing, then I I don't know if we'll play it. At least that's from my perspective. So,
Unless it's Shoot Mania.
but yeah, so I don't know. I mean, I'd love to play Quake again, but it's not a clear-cut answer that I can give, and I don't think even Tim or if Andrew was here could give that as well. It's just there's too many variables at this point, so
Right.
only time will tell. But yeah,
It's a question from Sasha Burry. When and how did you decide to go pro? For me, it was back in like 2006, 2007, just playing Quake 4 for fun, but started improving to the point where it actually made sense to go and compete at some of the big LAN events, like World Series of Video Games at the time. And then I remember I placed like fourth in like my first one, and then Evil Geniuses was interested right there. So it was basically just improving naturally from playing the game because I enjoyed it. I didn't actually like consciously decide like this is what I want to do and commit all this time to it. I was just basically playing for fun, trying to improve from just enjoying the game perspective. I don't know if Minstrel, AZK, or Rapha, how they quote unquote went pro. So let's see.
someone else can go first. Oh wait.
Well, for me, I think back in like 2004, I watched a frag movie, CS 1.6 frag movie. I think it was called The Fellowship of NOA. And then, yeah, I mean, I was really amazed. I saw that, and I instantly wanted to go play. And then I just kept playing CS from there.
All right, we'll leave Minstrel for last. For me, I grew up playing Quake 3. I started playing. My dad introduced me to it back like 2002, 2003 when I was like 12 or 13 years old. And once I saw the first like pro matches and like the money that they were playing for, the prestige and stuff, I'd always been really competitive growing up with basketball, sports in general, and I already liked Quake. I didn't get to play much, but after that, I was hooked. I knew that if I got the opportunity, this is something that I wanted to do was to be able to actually compete. But that didn't happen for a long time for me, so I played the game for fun. Periodically would get better somehow without playing for months and months at a time because my parents were divorced and I only had internet when I would go and visit my dad. So I would only get to play like 2 to 6 weeks out of the year. And I think like yeah, around the same time that like Tim started getting really good at Quake 4, I had been playing Quake 3 as much as I could in between that time, and then there was a shift from Quake 4 back to Quake 3 with the CPL, and then ESWC picked it up. And that year was like 2007 going into 2008, and that's when I got my chance. I first got sponsored by SK, and yeah, so I went from not making it out of groups in one tournament, then the next I got fourth place, and then third place at the ESWC finals, and then I won my next tournament in Athens. And after that, I was like, all right, well, if there's more tournaments to play, I'm gonna keep at it. And uh, so yeah, been doing it ever since.
Minstrel, how did you go pro?
Well, DaHanG. It all started back in the days of Rust when I was playing with my friends Tailspin and Cool Matt. And we were like, we'd played this other great game before that called Firefall. It was a true esport title. But we like when we heard that Overwatch was coming out, it's like me, Tailspin, and Matt, and like Raz and these other guys all made a team at the start of the beta, and then went on from there. We got sponsored by Envious, you know, fun stuff like that.
I actually don't listen to music while I play competitive queues, but I'm into a lot of heavy metal music of pretty much all kinds: thrash, death metal, a lot of the Scandinavian stuff like melodic death metal, black metal. So that's my favorite type, I guess.
I'm the same as Tim as far as I don't listen to music while I play. I think sound was way too important in Quake, and it actually does help in this game as well. Like certain footsteps and stuff like that, where if you don't have that information, you could get flanked or you don't hear somebody's ultimate because your music's too loud and you're out in the open, you get caught out. Whose fault is that? It's your own. So I just try to eliminate that and just focus on the game. That's a good question for you, Tim, from Golden Boy. Maybe you could help him out.
Okay, let's see. Golden Boy, he likes playing Mercy, but seems to suffer getting focused really hard by an enemy flanker. What's a good approach to basically avoid it? Well, when you're playing as Mercy, before the actual engagement starts, you want to always look at the flanks and just you basically want to. So your FOV is like 103, but as a Mercy player, you should be treating it like basically a 270-degree angle functionally. Like you should constantly be looking back and forth because you really, as a Mercy player, you don't have much else to do anyway, since you're, healing or damage boosting. So before every fight, you need to constantly look at corners, and then during the fight, kind of pick out who can you fly to, even before the fight. But you want to also keep that in mind too. Like if you start hearing footsteps all of a sudden really close, don't even take a chance. Just fly to someone far away, and you can still be damage boosting or healing that same target that you were previously. So kind of just not get caught out by being really, really proactive. And I guess this one's for me and Rapha from Sawyer. How is it playing, Overwatch versus Quake? Like, you want to take this one first?
Sure. I think Quake is more based off of, let's say, like individual skill set as far as your aim, your movement, your positioning, your map knowledge, enemy knowledge, all that stuff. And a lot of that you can work on your own, even in, like TDM or CTF um, environments. But this game is so based around abilities and your teamwork and cohesion with those abilities that I mean, yes, you can work on certain skill sets for yourself and on the characters and champs that you play, but at the end of the day, in this game, you're not really going to have a lot of moments where you single-handedly carry. So, especially for competitive wise, you have to spend a lot of time scrimming and just talking about the game with your team and making sure that you're all on the same page and just like I think having more like setup plays, if that makes sense, or like situational awareness and knowing and discussing like ultimate usage, like if you're going to use it defensively, aggressively, like Tim mentioned before, like you always need to be talking about how close are you to your ultimate, like what the enemy ultimate's situation is, because these abilities, their impact is just so huge in this game. And yeah, it's all about teamwork in this game. So whereas sometimes I think in Quake you can make really good plays and carry your team if you're playing really well.
Yep, I essentially agree. I just want to point out it's kind of interesting thinking about the differences in team communications between the games. In
Yeah.
Overwatch, it's always about basically your ult charge and like what the team plan is to do. Whereas in Quake, it's basically item timings and like if you're playing capture the flag, for example, it's just where is the flag, where's your flag, where's the enemy flag if it happens to be, captured. So yeah, all you're hearing is like red armor 28, like attack at 32, you're not going into great detail during your Quake TDM or Quake CTF matches, whereas in Overwatch, it's just constantly, okay, you know, I'm going to wall them off, let's do a speed boost charge now. Or it's like it's an actual coordinated play constantly. So, yeah, a lot more individualistic for Quake.
Yeah, that's really true. The communication is so much more streamlined in Quake just based off of the game itself and the win conditions compared to Overwatch.
So the games I played before Overwatch, I mean, I think all of us have played tons of different games, but for me, it was really primarily just the other Quakes, Quake 2, then Quake 4, then Quake Live. I've obviously dabbled in all kinds of stuff, like Unreal Tournament and a lot of other things, Reflex. But in terms of actually, you know, playing a committed amount of time, it's always been some sort of a deathmatch FPS game.
Well, I played like all the weird, obscure games that had like prize pools that aren't like CS. So there's like Firefall. If anyone played that, fun game. Steam lasted about a month. Uh, Played Super Monday Night Combat and played like Battleborn in the 2 week gap before Overwatch was released. Won the first tournament in that game. Started out playing competitively in the Half-Life 1 Natural Selection. It's the mod.
For me, it was pretty much only COD1, CS Source, and a little bit of Quake 4.
For me, is Quake 3, Quake Live, a little bit of Quake 4 for like 6 months to a year until it died. And then I've played some random games for fun, like Left 4 Dead and stuff for console. But no need to go into detail about that. Yeah, so primarily a Quake background.
So the bulk of our day is going to be scrims, probably like 80%. I mean, I think about it just in terms of hours a day. So we play typically 4 hours of scrims a day, sometimes 6, maybe 5 or 6 times a week. But then there are typically tournaments on the weekend. Right now, it's kind of an anomaly because Mezzer and ID are at BlizzCon for the Overwatch competition representing USA and Canada. But yeah, probably 4 to 6 hours a day, 5 days a week scrims, and then we'll do maybe 30 minutes to an hour of VOD review during maybe 3 days a week. It kind of depends. We kind of play it by ear, depending on the success of the scrims, what we feel is a true weakness that we need to focus on, and that sort of thing. And I think the team house we kind of discussed earlier with Rapha's answer. We don't. I think that's just something that remains to be seen, depending on the Blizzard League and just how the scene grows. But no serious discussions yet have taken place on the Team Liquid team house.
Okay, the question from Sasha Brewery. It's like up there a little bit. Says, as I understand, you're older than most everyone else. How much do you think that age impacts your play? I think the youngest on our team is Kevin, ACK, but the rest of us, we're like all around the same age. A couple are a little older than me, but I think the biggest thing that age plays into it, I think a couple of us have put away the myth that as we've gotten older that our aim gets worse. I don't know, for me, I feel like the last couple of years my aim's actually improved and gotten better. Um, so it's not that like reflexes are falling off. I think what happens with age is just more responsibility comes into play for a lot of people. And so they have to like devote more time either to Tim will laugh at this. The whole wife kid job adage,
Yeah.
like in your life, like just responsibilities take over. You're not able to invest as much time into these games, and yeah, I mean, and it goes along with a question somebody else asked, like how much time you need to put in a game. I think for any game, skill, whatever, a lot of it comes down to talent. Talent means like how naturally good you are at the game, which leads to how much time you kind of need to put into getting better. Um, Most people can all reach the same skill ceiling. It's just the amount of time varies from person to person, how much they actually have to work at it, how much of it comes naturally or not. Um, so I think, with these whole sponsorship situations for guys our age, it's just the way that the esports scene is working now, it's allowing us to actually still be able to to play and compete because it's able to provide a salary that's good enough that we can focus on the game and play the proper amount. We need to be playing like 6 to 8 hours a day, almost every day, to be at the top level and to improve. Otherwise, you just slowly will end up falling behind the other teams that put in that time. Uh, so yeah, so I don't think age has anything to do with it right now as far as reflexes or anything. It's just about most people, once they reach like 27, which is where I am now, they just responsibilities get in the way, and that's why you tend to see more players that are between the ages of 16 and 21, who are either in high school or college, and maybe they have a couple classes a day, and they do a little homework, but then most of the time they have is free time, so they're able to devote, if they love the game, be able to devote that much time to it. So yeah, it just comes down
If
to
you
that.
if you compare it to traditional sports, you see there's quite a few people who are still competing at the top levels in their like late 30s. Like in boxing, you got it in like almost every sport. You've got like, I don't think it's that once you hit a certain age, you're just terrible. It's like how much time you can dedicate based on like obviously the salary, and there's also the style of the player. So if you're just like a plus forward, aim down kind of player, then I think they're going to be more negatively affected by age. But if you have like a more kind of like a tactical mindset, then I think that is greater longevity.
And so I can back off that and scroll down to Iron Arm's question. It's, since it's a related question, how many hours should you put in a day, basically? I agree with Rapha, probably 6 to 8. As long as those hours are focused and dedicated in the sense that you're like actually getting something out of the practice, you're seeing mistakes, you're actually getting value. It's kind of like, I don't know how many people can relate to this, but if you have like a regular job and you're working 40 hours a week, once you've reached 50, your efficiency goes down a lot. That 50th hour, you're not getting nearly as much done as you were on hour 20. And I think it's the same for a daily regiment in a game. Once you've hit like hour 8 in a day, I feel like you're not getting a whole lot of value on hour 9 or hour 10. So I'd say 6 to 8 hours is kind of the sweet spot, as long as you're alert and getting something out of it.
And just queuing up and like playing on autopilot isn't practice. Like you need to pick specific stuff like weaknesses or things to work on and like concentrate on trying to fix that. Like you need to like find all these small little problems in your game and just like focus on that. And then once that's an automatic thing, you go on to the next one and the next one, and you just like build up the automaticity of like what the optimal play is.
And also, don't mistake practice for just scrimming for 10 hours straight. Because I've seen teams that do that. I've worked with teams that do that. That's not, you have to do other things. You have to discuss what you do. If you do something and it works or it doesn't work, you need to discuss that. If you're doing a VOD review, you're breaking down a VOD from one of your games or someone else's game, you have to actually discuss that. It's not enough to just watch the VOD, because you don't engage as a group and engage as a team. And if you don't discuss that properly, the information you gain is not going to be retained, and it's just going to go in one ear out the other.
Like we might have all some different opinions on what the most overpowered / broken comp is in Overwatch. There's a lot of stuff that's pretty deadly. I think that if a team is running Zarya plus Mei effectively, it's really tough to deal with because just the wall alone is already tough to deal with, and then when you combine that with their ults and the fact that Mei generates her ult fairly quickly in comparison to some
so
other heroes,
fast.
it's just if they just effectively use their ults with the Mei Zarya combo, it's almost guaranteed to be a wipe, and that's really tough to deal with. That's the main one that comes to mind for me.
It's also a great Nano Boost Dragon Blade combo. Like, you know, like Instagib, a 200 HP character with the animation canceling.
Yeah.
I mean, Nano boosted Reaper with Zarya Bow was pretty insane.
Yeah, I think Blizzard's aim should be to make sure that, you know, the shit that happens, the combos, that it's not the same thing that you see over and over. It just goes back to the champion picks. You want it to be rotating. You want to have diversity in the pool. So that also leads to, you know, like certain combos, are they just way too strong together? And is it, you know, is it just the design of the champion in general, or is it like literally all it is like one ability? And if you just change the ratios, it helps balance the entire game out. A good example for that would be like we've just mentioned, you know, the whole Ana boost thing with Genji and Reaper. Um, I think that they just gave the boost itself too much effectiveness, and if you give it like 2 out of the 3 properties that it has, so let's say you were to give it like, you know, when you get boosted, you deal that much more damage, and you know you're tankier, but you're not as fast. Like you don't have some insane speed boost and like reload reduction and shit like that. You know, I think it would be a lot more balanced. Or if you're like faster and you take less damage, I mean, it allows characters to get to the back line better and be disruptive, and they're harder to kill. But it doesn't mean that they're automatically going to wipe them by themselves because they don't have the damage boost, you know. So, yeah. And I think as time goes on, there'll be different things that are overpowered, but it just comes down to the balanced team. And I do like the fact that this PTR, that they're actually changing values from time to time, and it's not just like, oh, here, we're changing these, they're in the PTR, and then a week later, you know, without getting enough actual feedback to see how balanced it actually is, they just roll with it. So you need to have some play testing and some actual statistics behind it before you implement it, I think.
I think I'm the only person here who played any competitive TF2, and I only played like 2 seasons at the start. But I mean, obviously, TF2 it was like 100% double soldier, medic, double scout, demo man, so there's no class composition picks really. Like you might change one person in one situation, but that's about it. Like I'm not too sure on the pacing. I think Overwatch is much more in-depth strategy-wise because you're not just like, okay, let's run in and out DM them, or maybe we're like, let's build Uber and then go through the doorway with Uber charge and then out DM them. Like Overwatch, it's much more complex to deal with all the different variables involved.
So I did not watch the World Series last night. Anyone else?
That shit was hot.
Are you a White Sox fan? Or Cubs?
No, I don't really follow baseball too much at all, but I mean, I'm from the Chicago area. All my friends Cubs fans, so uh, I just thought the game itself was so good. Just looking at it objectively, um, so close, so many good situations, and I think just the gravity of it, like over 100 years, to put that into perspective, over 100 years since the team had last won a world title, and they finally were able to do it again. Like you've had like great grandparents that have died, lived and died before the last time that was accomplished. So I think that's what was so nice about last night. Even if they lost, like the fact that they made it back. Both teams played so well. Oh, that's a good question. Azaraki asks, would you guys prefer the Blizzard League to be a fully closed league season like LCS, or would you prefer it to be a series of big tournaments like the Dota majors plus the international? I guess I'll answer first. I'd like it to be a mixture of the both. I would like it to be where, Blizzard sets a certain part of time up within the year, whether that be like a 3 month period, so like a quarter of the year or half the year, where the teams that are in the league, they play in the league. We're playing games week in and week out, leading towards like their World Championship finals thing, and then like the other half or the other 75% of the year, if they allow like other tournament organizations across the globe to be able to run tournaments, so that we can still continue to travel and play and mix up things internationally. I think that would be really good. That's the one thing that I don't like about LCS is how region locked it is, and you don't get to see like real international competitions, but once a year. With the LCS finals, I don't count their midseason all-star bullshit. Like that's that's half the time the teams that get in, like some of them shouldn't even be in there. It's like a popularity contest at that point. Whereas like other teams that could actually qualify and be really good and put up a shot, like don't even get to go. So I think you need to find a balance between the two. Uh,
How about this one? If you weren't a pro, what would you do in life? So for me, and I'm kind of knocking out the super, super fun things, I guess, like a professional athlete, all that kind of stuff.
Horseback riding ballerina princess.
I'd be a
Uh,
cop.
All right, that's a good one. I'd probably be doing something similar to what I'm doing part time with my job as like a consultant dealing with, software implementations. Kind of boring, but it's kind of cool to actually work on projects and like seeing like a project, start. You got so little progress, but then the timeline goes, and then more and more gets done, and then you're finished, and it's nice to have a finished product. It's kind of cool than having like working at a call center or something where it's just monotonous work. It's kind of cool to have that trajectory.
Mouse acceleration. Well, I know that like the vast majority of top Quake players use or used mouse accel at one point or another, but I don't think almost anybody uses it in Overwatch just because like there's the driver issue where you couldn't use it at LAN or potentially couldn't use it at LAN. And Razor's implementation is not customizable at all. Like PovoHot is great.
Yeah, I haven't been a high Excel user in Quake, but I decided not to use any in Overwatch for two reasons. The main reason is what Minstrel said. There's a possibility that you can't use the software since it's external at tournaments, depending on what their rule set is on installing programs to try to prevent cheating and whatnot on LAN. So I was like, all right, well, I'd rather not start playing with something and then not be able to use it at the event and have to adjust something so drastic like on the fly. Also, there's a lot more tracking involved, I think, in this game rather than flicking. So it suits to have like a smoother sensitivity more so than needing to whip around like in Quake. So yeah, so I just haven't used it at all. If it was in the game itself, I probably wouldn't use much. I would just use it on a couple champions, like the high mobility ones, like Tracer and Genji, so that when you dash or blink behind somebody, it's a lot easier to 180 and be ready to shoot again. Uh, but for other champions, I don't think it's that necessary. So, and I think it's kind of proven why. Like if you look at the best aimers right now, they come from TF2 and like ACK's aim, from Counter Strike translates really, really well for McCree and Tracer and champions like this. So, and they didn't really use Excel in those games.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen some really good players in CS use XL, and same thing for Quake, but I think it's mostly preference. In general, though, like it's rare to see players use XL at the highest level.
For this question, I guess we can kind of make this the last one, and Tim and Kevin can start this since you were like the first on the team. The question is, got it from Ezekiel, got in late, not sure if this has been asked, but how did you guys find each other to form a team?
Actually, for me, it was pretty random. I was playing Reflex, and I met Dummy in a server, and then he started talking to me about Overwatch. This was before Beta 2. And yeah, so when the second beta got released, I started playing some scrims, and yeah, I decided I wanted to keep playing the game and try to make something out of it. So
Yeah, so for me, it was also like some of the teams that I was playing on didn't really work out, and I knew I played against Dummy and Mezzer some a little earlier in the beta, and they were looking to make a team, so I was, going to say, let me try out as a support player, and pretty much from there it kind of worked out. Then we joined Liquid, and some more roster changes on the way, and then here we are now.
I guess Minstrel would be next on the totem pole for this question.
Well, I came in after the whole like split of the original Envy roster, and then like the split of like the original Fnatic before it was Fnatic roster. So I came in. Who was I replacing? It was like Bonathil. It was like me and ID came in to replace Bonathil and Zoms at the time. So I'd been playing Overwatch since like the first stage of beta. But so not really very interesting story.
And then for me, same way with Tim. At the start, I was playing with a different team at the time, and played with each other for a couple months, but then things really started to not work out. There were problems within the team, attitude, communication wise, and I think in some aspects with a player or two, just fundamentally not understanding the game. And at one point, one of the teammates that I had started it with, he decided he didn't want to play anymore, and that was kind of like a domino effect. So that people started leaving, and I just didn't want to rebuild at the time. I looked at my options and decided, that based on the way that teams were at the time and openings, there was a tournament for Gamescom, for IEM Gamescom, so I had to choose if I wanted to invest into trying to join a team that likely wasn't going to make it, it was gonna be really hard to qualify and go to that tournament, or if I should just focus on trying to win QuakeCon, which I really, really wanted to because Cypher and I were tied for the most titles. I wanted to actually overtake that this year. And then what I would do after is, figure out whether I needed to start from scratch again, or if there would be ample opportunities to join something then. And actually, DaHanG and ID approached me. We played Quake together before, and they approached me literally as QuakeCon was ending, asking me if I wanted to try out. And the spot that happened to be open is Flex, which is what I had been playing the whole time anyway. So it just worked out perfect. It just worked out from there, and so we've been playing together since the beginning of September, I think. So, yeah, that's it for me.
So I think we're running a little low on time, but I'll try to run through a couple that I'm seeing here. So one from Louis Yu. How much of a factor does a health pack spawn management play in Overwatch at the moment? Well, speaking for myself, it doesn't
0.
play a factor. Yeah, you kind of just go and hope it's there. The
No
only
one's
thing I would
timing
say,
it.
right? If you're like a tracer and you know you picked it up, you know you can't go get it again very quickly, I guess might be part of it, but I think that's like the only thing is if you picked it up recently, you know it's not there for another 12 seconds or whatever it is. That's like the extent of the health pack management. Anyone play Warsaw? I don't think anyone does currently. I did play it a little bit a long time ago. It was a pretty fun deathmatch game based off the Quake 2 engine. Really good, cool movement, but I don't really like the strong and weak ammo system. It takes too long to get frags, in my opinion.
Level of education. I have a degree in history and a degree in financial engineering.
Yeah, I have an MBA. Just it's a general MBA when I had my bachelor's in business as well with a minor in marketing.
I have a bachelor's in criminal justice with a minor in computer forensics.
All those CSI Miami type shows, dog.
I live in Florida. There's plenty of criminals, so I can always just go be a cop.
All right. I think we can end there. I think we're supposed to take like a little break and then continue games.
Okay.
Yep, that's the end of our AMA for now. Thanks a lot, guys, for doing this.
Yeah, no problem. Guess welcome.
Thank you.
So for now, the pros are going to go and take